Everybody, welcome to the very first episode of the Commissions and Cashflow Show. I am your host, Andrew Lasky. We have the one and only Scott Karten today on the show. Scott, welcome to the show, brother.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. So Scott, you've been very instrumental into my life, affected me in many different ways, but today is not about me. It's actually about you. So if you want to go ahead and share with the audience your background and how you got into sales and where you are today.
Sure. So look, I've sort of got into sales. I think I've been in it my whole life, to be honest. I just didn't realize that I was selling. At a young age, I've just been always hustling, whether I was mowing lawns, whether I was working little odd-end jobs, whether it was me being a paper boy. I just was always trying to find ways to make money. In college, I was trying to make ends meet, and it was me and my college roommate that were basically trying to figure out ways to make money. And it was us coming out with a business out of our dorm room. But I would say my first real sales job, was, when I got out of college and I was basically trying to figure out what I was going to do because I got an internship in college with a sports basic marketing agency, which was almost a sports agency. And I thought I was an athlete growing up, thought that I was going to play professional soccer. And then I blew my knee out, and all of my hopes and dreams to become a professional soccer player, which is what I thought my aspirations were going to be, were sort of gone within, a few month period of getting multiple knee surgeries. So it was like, what was I going to do? What was the next step for me? And like I said, I mean, people that know me best know I didn't come from much. And I'll never forget the people that sort of told me, what I can and cannot do in life. And I always say that I don't come with a little bit of a chip on a shoulder. I come with a pretty big chip on my shoulder. And I just said that, like, those who told me that I can't, I'll make sure that I'll show them what I can do. And I never really thought sales was what I was going to do. Like I said before, it just sort of found me. But it was, whether it was this, creating this business out of my dorm room, or then becoming an ice cream man, in college. Not to go backwards, but people would be like, man, you were an ice cream man. But if I really go back and think about that job during the summer of college, where most people were going to the beach, I was working 7 days a week, but I had to go back and really think about, okay, how do you sort of navigate that business? And it was looking at a map of all of the different neighborhoods and trying to say, okay, you can either go here, 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 or I can territory manage and make sure that the neighborhoods that I was going to go were going to streamline directly into each neighborhood. And then how was I going to make sure that the parents would use me versus the other ice cream man? So I came up with, hey, I would give out free blow pops to all of the kids. And in the first week, I would get out of the truck and play the sports that in the streets with the kids. So the parents were like, hey, wait for the guy that played hockey with you. Wait for the guy that gave the free blow pop. And I just was constantly hustling. And so while everyone was out at the beach, I was working 7 days a week. I had to go every night, go do inventory management, see what was in the truck, and basically go that next morning and go to the place where you got all of the ice cream, and had to constantly go back and restock, and then have to figure out through my soccer backgrounds, there were certain tournaments that were there, and go and try to find a way to pay the tournament off to get on the field. And literally, in a single tournament, I made a few $1,000s. And well, once again, everyone was enjoying their summer off. I made upwards of $13,000 for a summer to help me pay for, school. So I was just always hustling, always finding a way to sell. I just didn't realize at the time that was sales. I was just hustling.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, I got an internship with a sports agency and thought that if I wasn't going to be an athlete, what's the next best thing is I'll represent athletes. And only 2 people that were given an internship with this company every year. And if you were lucky enough to get an internship, you were basically guaranteed a job at that company. So I said, all right, done. It was my junior year in college. That's what I'm going to wind up doing. I'm going to wind up being, an actual sports agent, or a so-called sports agent, because you didn't have to go to college. You didn't have to go to law school to wind up working at this firm. They had a sports marketing firm, and they also had a sports memorabilia part of the firm. And the sports marketing side, I'll remember this very well, was like, hey, they had a dog tick flea spray, and they wanted you to go through your athletes and see who had a dog and who was willing to bring their dog to the actual events and say, hey, here's my dog, and so on and so forth. And, I'm from New York. The firm was actually in New York City. It was a company called Steiner Sports Marketing. And, they had athletes such as Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, Mia Hamm, Jeremy Shockey, and you were able to represent these athletes. And it was just such a cool thing for someone that was so into sports to be able to sort of work on that side of the business. But so if I fast forward out when I'm getting done with college, it was after 9/11, the company had left New York City and went to Westchester. And, what you did is you would basically call that company and sort of see, was the CEO there? And if you interned with anybody of sort of someone of elk, you would make sure that that person was there as well as the CEO. You would go to the office and sort of say, hey, I just got done with school. And most of the time you were given a job. And basically I was calling, and it would just so happen to be that, hey, the CEO wasn't there. And the person that I interned for was like number 3 in the company. And it just so happened that one was there, the other wasn't. One was there, the other wasn't. And an opportunity for an entry-level medical sales job was sort of fell into my lap. It was no salary, straight commission, selling what looked like a credit card terminal that basically checked patient eligibility verification, where you would swipe your insurance card, and it would spit out immediately if the patient had insurance, what the copay would be. And I wasn't really excited about the opportunity, but they were looking for young guys, young gals right out of college, and that were willing to hustle. And my mom had said to me, Scott, it was right after 9/11. The economy wasn't great. You have one more time to go see if those 2 gentlemen were out at, in Steiner, or you're going to go on this interview with this other company, because you don't wait for tomorrow what's in front of you today. I called again to see if they were there. They weren't there. I begrudgingly went to the interview. I was able to get the job, and somebody that I grew up with, my best friend growing up, also was able to get the job with this other company. And his dad's best friend was in med device sales, and at that time worked for a company selling pacemakers. And at the time, that was considered the creme de la creme of actual med device sales. And he told me and my best friend that, hey, this is the type of money he made. And at that time, he was making $500,000. And right then and there, my eyes were opened. And he's told me and my friend that we had to pay our dues and basically do 4 years of like B2B sales, do this type of job, build up a brag book, meaning that we would have to have a track record of success, have some awards that were to our name, P clubs, so on and so forth. And that if we did that for 3.5, 4 years, that those types of jobs that he was in would open up for us. And that was all I needed to hear, because the job that I was doing, the intern job, was great and had the perks where I got to hang out with all these athletes. But it wasn't a sports agent where you were making that type of money. The perks where you got to hang out with all of the athletes. Now, the salary was good, but it wasn't that.
It wasn't the 500,000.
No. And so when I heard that, I was like, boom, blinders were on. I was like, that is what I'm going after. I want that type of money. So I basically put my head down and I just started grinding. And you know what? I didn't realize that all of the other jobs that I was doing throughout my life was I was selling myself. I was just always a hustler, because everything I wanted to do in life was to try to just either make myself better. I was trying to level up, and I was just willing to work hard. I always say that I'm not better than anybody. I'm just willing to outwork you. I'm not smarter or better than anything. And so I just started working really, really hard, but I was always super personable. I found success pretty immediately with this job. And so I spent a year and a half with that company. I wound up doing extremely well. And then I wound up being able to get a job with another company that actually paid me a salary. It was like $30,000, if my memory serves me correctly. And it was selling EMR software, which was software to physicians that was doing what that job was doing, but it was doing, hey, medical billing. It was checking patient eligibility verification, but it definitely related to what I was doing, that this other company was willing to give me an opportunity. So I actually took that job, was able to do that for 3 years. I became the number 1 rep in the company. And I did that for 3 years. And so now I had basically 4 years of experience. And I said, I'm ready. I've done it, man. I got my 4 years, have that track record of success. Let's go. I'm ready for that hard job. Like, here I come. I'm going to go get my okay. And my buddy that I had started with, that his dad's best friend was in the OR. He had landed a job in the OR. with a company called Stryker. And he actually told me, hey, you know what? Stryker actually has a new division that's just starting. And I think I can get you an internship or an interview, I'm sorry, with this new division. And he was able to get me an interview with that new division. And I started an interview process with them. You know, Stryker has a very long, rigorous interview process. You have to go through what's called a Gallup, which is like a personality assessment. And if you don't pass the way that they want you to pass, like you'll be dead at go.
I remember that. I did that myself.
Yep. So I basically did this interview, but because they didn't even have literally they just had a VP of sales. They didn't have a sales force or anything just yet. This process was super long. Now, normally, if they have a sales team and they're just adding a rep, your sales process, the interview process could be, you know, maybe a month, you know, maybe even longer. But mine was super long because they had literally no infrastructure, just the VP of sales. And I was probably interviewing for like a month and a half or so. And then I got a call from a recruiter about a company called Cynosure Laser. And it was something completely different than anything that I was ever interested in, because literally my blinders were on and I was like fully focused on getting into the OR. That was all I was thinking about, was OR, 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 based on that recommendation that I was given from that gentleman. And when I got a call from the recruiter, I literally said thanks, but no thanks about this laser job. And it was my wife that I was about to get married in 2 weeks, who was a recruiter, that told me, call back that recruiter, tell them that you'll take the interview, because I bet you Stryker is going to make you do a bunch of interviews more, and you might as well go on that interview and keep sharp. And so I called the guy back. I told him I would do the actual interview. And when I went on the interview, the gentleman that sat across from me was a former professional baseball player that worked at Stryker. And he actually told me, Scott, what I want you to do is, because I was about to get married, is go get married, go on your honeymoon, and come and work for me. Trust me, you're skipping a step. And what happened is, all of a sudden I was at a fork in the road where everything that I thought in my life was to go right, because now I had paid the dues, I'm ready to go. And now I had this quandary of like, do I go left? But what happens is, and this is what I realized, is that sometimes in life, it's not necessarily what you planned. And what you plan is right there in front of you. It's sometimes the person that you're going to work for. And the person that was sitting in front of me, I just related to, and I believed him, and I related to him extremely well. And I left the interview saying, you know what, I'm going to do as much homework as I can in this short period of time. I researched the industry and I called a few people. I called my buddy that worked at Stryker. He told me to stay the path of Stryker. I called another buddy that was in med device, and he heard enough about lasers and thought that it was a really good opportunity. And I took a leap of faith and I chose the laser side. And to be honest, the rest is history. And that's sort of where I've been. And it was the best decision I ever made. So I think that's a little bit about, you know, how I got to where I am. I could obviously expand a little further, but I don't know.
No, that's great. And so, look, I was your junior rep. What you've done in the laser industry has been incredible. You were a multiple President Club winner. Then moving up into mid-level management, and then moving up into a director, and being on a national scale. Every single position that you've held, you've just crushed it. And so I want to stick right now onto the actual sales part of it. So you mentioned in college, you would go on these routes into these different neighborhoods, that you would, route them out so that you were minimizing the time and working the route properly. Other than that, how did you structure your day in medical device sales to continuously be a top rep year after year after year?
Yeah, I think that it was just, to me, there, people that are successful in med device, or in my world, but I think in general in medical, you can either be successful and work 9 to 5. For me, it was a lifestyle, and it's always been a lifestyle. And I've just always put in the homework. I think the toughest part about the job is the homework, and it's what are you doing after hours? And it's either, are you educating yourself by just getting better on sales? Are you making phone calls to people that are better than you and trying to find out what are they doing, and working on your pitches, working on your craft? I was always just trying to find out ways to get better, always. But I also just was relentless on my network, to be honest. I realized that I can only be in so many places at so many times. But if I was able to find ways to find other people in my territory that I could befriend and make friends with, that my spider web could be bigger than other people's. So not only would I work efficiently with my time, but if I was able to then create people that worked in different sectors, but were calling on the same specialties, and then they were actually helping me, I always said, like, once again, I was going to never stop working. My phone never shut off and still never does. But if I had people that were actually helping me along the way, I was going to be unstoppable no matter what company I worked for. So now that stuff doesn't just happen overnight. I think people think that, like, oh, now, for instance, to give you an example, is look in my space, and you know this, but for others that are listening, right? Like, in cosmetics or in the aesthetic space, you have people that sell injectables, you have people that sell skincare, you have people that sell, low level other devices. You are all going to be in the same offices all the time. Sometimes I think when I first got in the industry, I would go into a meeting and I'd be like, oh, look at this person. They have to do a lunch. The doctor wants to see me. And I almost overlooked them. And I realized, like, that's very silly thinking and very short-sighted. You need to be able to realize that if you can befriend someone like that and realize that we're all trying to get to the same goal, well, then all of a sudden I wound up becoming great friends with the people that worked at this injectable company, that injectable company, then this skincare line. And then all of a sudden I had all of these people that became really good friends, but now I had all of these people looking out in these offices that wound up, they only covered maybe 20 square blocks where I covered multiple states. But these guys were my ears and eyes in all of these different offices and were looking out for me and were saying, hey, you know what? This practice is looking potentially at maybe this product or this product. And therefore, I was working smarter as well as harder. They always say work smarter, not harder. That never existed for me. I was always working hard, but I also was working smarter than my competition, where I didn't overlook anybody, because to me, sometimes I was overlooked. So I never overlooked anybody. I was always like, hey, if I could have a better network plus work efficiently by maybe working my territory in a way where instead of me saying, well, I'll jump here, jump here, jump here, jump here, I'll try to streamline, but also having all of these people from different industries looking out for me, that was going to help me. If I was just running as just a solo person, well, now I had 15 people that were working for me, maybe in different companies, but working for a common goal. So I think that helped me immensely.
Yeah, I think that's huge. So, a lot of reps, they go into other offices and they do see other reps, but you've been able to actually develop these relationships to where you're benefiting them and they're clearly, benefiting you by giving you leads. How were you able to do that for the people that are maybe, medical device reps in this industry, or maybe it's a different industry? How did you nurture those relationships so that it actually turned into business for you?
Yeah, sure. I think that when I first got into the space, like I said, I think I completely overlooked them. I think that, when you first get in, I think most sales reps will come from a place of, I think most great sales reps come from a place of insecurity, whether they want to admit that or not. A lot of us come from sports backgrounds and we all want to try to prove something. And probably come out. Like I said, I was like, oh, I'm better than you, or hey, you have to do this, you have to do that, and I don't need to do that. And I did overlook them. It was when actually the recession of 07, 08 happened, and I actually left the laser industry and I went to actually help launch a derm path company, which is when you actually cut out skin and check and send it to a lab to see if it's cancer or not. And I actually was then the one going and doing a lot of lunches and building networks with a bunch of dermatologists and plastic surgeons, that I kept seeing the same reps over and over and over again doing those lunches. And I actually ran into somebody that I kept seeing over and over again. And then I realized, like, hey, his wife went to actual high school with my wife. And we just got along really, really well. And we developed a friendship from us seeing each other over and over and over again. And I realized that, and we just were very, very similar in a lot of different ways. And I realized that, hey, I could help him. He could help me. And I was like, this is so silly. I was being so narrow minded in the way that I was going about my business previously. And I knew that I was doing the derm path job that was a job. It wasn't a career. I loved the lasers, and I knew that eventually I was going to get back into that space. And I was doing the derm path as a way for me to even further my network. And that when the economy righted itself, I was going to come back with even a bigger network of the core market, as we say, which in lasers, the core is your derms and your plastic surgeons. And I was going to have this huge network of dermatologists and plastic surgeons because I was going to be calling on them consistently with the derm path. But what I was able to do was I was able to meet all of these other reps on a very regular basis. And through this one connection with this one guy, he then introduced me to all of his reps at his company. And then thus I made friends with the other major injectable company and met all of those guys. But they realized that I wasn't just out there. They used to be scared of laser reps, thinking that you're going to go in there and literally just burn down the village and that you're going to sell a laser and then basically ruin a relationship, because those reps, they have smaller areas and they live off of that doctor consistently. Whereas if you came in with a laser, sold them something and it didn't maybe work, you could destroy that relationship that they've harvested and farmed for a very long time. I was now not doing lasers, but made them realize that I was a good guy and that my way of doing business was, I was brought up by a family that, look, I do everything the right way. I'm not looking to just try to make a quick hit and get out. I wanted to do things the right way. I believed in my technology, and I wasn't now in lasers. I was simply trying to do things to try to help with cancer. But I developed relationships, let them realize who I was as a person, and just made that. And when I was doing ride days with them, I sort of said, hey, I'm going to take a day out. I'm not going to try to sell my services. It's a lonely job being a rep. You are literally just you and your dashboard. And a lot of times people will say, they'll listen to sports talk or they'll do a phone call with somebody else just trying to chop it up. To me, that's wasted time, wasted effort. So I was like, hey, it's a lonely day. Do you want to do a ride day together or whatever it is? And I realized that if they were lucky enough to bring me on their call day, if I was going to be selfish enough that when they brought me in behind to some of their accounts and I was like, hey, by the way, here's what I do, they would never do it again. So I just sat back and was an observer, and I didn't try to sell any of my services. I just listened and tried to develop friendships with these people. And then it was them that said, hey, they're like, who is this? They're like, oh, this is my buddy, and he actually represents this company. And then and only then did I then detail them a little bit about what I was representing. And by doing it that way, I gained trust. But it took something that I had to put in the time and effort over a while. It was a slow burn. It wasn't something where it was instant gratification. I had to take the time. But by doing it that way, I was able to develop a network that once again was untouchable. And that was done in New York City. And that when the time did come for me to come back to lasers, man, I was untouchable.
I remember I would try to get into all of these derms and plastics, and I would see a meeting pop up. Scott Karten's going to go meet with them. I just called the office. I just went in there twice in the last month and I couldn't get a meeting, and you were able to get a meeting due to those relationships. So that's amazing. It worked for you year and year and year again. So one thing that you mentioned before that I want to make sure that we don't skip over. So you talked a lot about how it was the homework that you did outside of the 9 to 5 that really made you successful. You know, you have a beautiful wife and 3 beautiful kids. For medical device reps that are listening, that are starting to have families or have families, how were you able to, get your work done outside of those hours and still spend time with your family? Because I know the relationship that you have with them is incredible, and you don't just win on the field, but you also win off the field, and that's being at home.
Sure. I think it's very difficult, right? I mean, I can't try to make that sound like it's easy to do. I think it's having somebody that understands you at home, that realizes that like what your passion is. And my wife knew that I've always wanted more for me and for her. And my passion has always been that, like, look, I just want to give for my family everything that I necessarily didn't have. Like I said, I'll never forget the people that sort of told me and made fun of me for not having designer pants, when I was in 3rd grade. I'll never forget the people that made fun of me that I couldn't hit a baseball. And That's what drove me to play soccer every single day. And the person that made fun of me because I had the fake pair of pants, that's what drove me to mow lawns and, deliver papers and just sort of work and work and work. And when I met my wife, she knew that my aspirations were I was just going to keep working to try to just attain everything. But I wear the same, I wear the same black t-shirt. I wear black pants. I wear a black suit with a black shirt. I don't do anything for me. Everything is for my family. I just want to give them everything that I never had. But it is very hard to juggle when you're trying to accomplish great things. I'm home, I'm working. What I try to do is, even if it's just me sitting with my wife, well, she may be watching a show or reading a book. If I'm just sitting next to her while I'm trying to do things, it's just being present and being that I'm sitting next to her. Maybe I am working, but she knows that I'm there. Right. So, and for my kids, like I sit here in my office and we have the success behind me, but I have 3 pieces of art that sit to the right that says grind, hustle, execution. Grind, verb, to perform repetitive tasks over and over in order to attain a goal. Hustle, verb, to only control a pillar of success. Execution, noun, stop talking and put in the work. My office used to be right when you walked out of my house, and I have the French doors and glass. And even if daddy wasn't home, they got to see those 3 things every time they left the house. My wife retired at the age of 28. My kids don't have to want or need anything. And that's because daddy grind, hustles, and executes. I make a point to go on vacation twice a year with my children, always. And when I'm on vacation, it took me a while because on vacation, I used to still take calls, but now I've learned to be able to wake up early in the morning. I get out before everyone. I get to the sand. I stick my feet in. I check my emails early. At lunchtime, I'll check the emails again. But other than that, I shut off and I be with them. But they do know that I work super hard, but it's for them. And when I am off, and like if it's for the weekends, I cut out. Everything is for them. But when it's for the other stuff, when it's the homework, they know that like I'm just putting in those extra efforts and it's just trying to get better. And I try to let them know that, look, everything that daddy does and everything that I am doing is so that I can try to provide them with the best life possible. So they never had to deal with the things that I dealt with. And that's feeling like maybe that you're a less than, or maybe this. But I also tell them the day that they're not a good human being, this all goes away. Like, I don't care. Like, they can, if they ever become snooty, if they ever do this, I just want them to take care of other people, make sure that they are good human beings. If we see somebody in uniform, we go over to them and say, thank you for your service. Like, we take care of other people first. As long as they are good people, daddy will go out and take care of them. But it is very difficult, to be quite honest. If you want to be great at anything in life, you have to be willing to have sacrifices. And sometimes some of those sacrifices are missing things. It is, if I was just selling, hey, I was working long hours, but at least I got to sometimes be home. Once I started to move up into management and I was managing the Northeast, then managing the East Coast, and then going on a national level, that did require me traveling. And when I was traveling, look, I missed certain things. I missed games. I missed certain things that is tough and it's hard for your kids. But when I am home, I try to extremely be present. Like, to me, my best friend is my wife. She's my North Star. Everybody that knows that knows that. When I'm on the road, I make sure that I call her. I let her know that I'm present even if I'm there, because everything I do for them. And they know that, so, but it is difficult. Like, I can't stress that enough. It's not easy. And if you want to be great and like truly great, nothing in life, people that think that they're going to just show up and they're going to make that type of money, I'm sorry, it doesn't exist. If you see success, it's not an accident or a chance. It's hard work, patience, learning, and sacrifice, right? And then to my left, they told me I couldn't. That's why I did, right? Like, once again, I'm not better than anybody. I'm just going to outwork you.
Yep.
And that's a fact, right?
I love it. I love it. You outwork everybody in all aspects of your life. Again, doing what I used to do, what you currently still do, it's very difficult. I see a lot of reps, they're on the road all the time, whether they like to discuss it with us or not. Like, their at-home life isn't as great as they want it to be. And somebody like yourself that has this beautiful family that, they look up to you, they cherish you, they're happy for you. And you've been able to continuously win year over year, not just as a rep, but as a manager as well. And that's the next segment of the show that I want to get into, what you've done as far as moving up and building a team. I mean, your energy is completely magnetic. People want to come, they want to work with you. How are you able to build a team that will literally run through a brick wall for you?
Look, I think that at the end of the day, you could be very corporate. You could tell people, hey, when you're on an interview or whatever it is, this is what you're looking for. And I think when I first got into management, my interviews were very conversational, and I was just like, hey, this, that, the other. I think as I've got more long, been in management for a much longer period of time, I've always said to level up, you got to be around great people. And I've been fortunate enough to be around a lot of great people. And I've been very professionally vulnerable and been able to say, ooh, what is that person doing? How can I incorporate that and make that mine? And I've learned certain interview styles and processes that have been able to make me a very strong interviewer. But I think either you have it or you don't have it. But if I like someone and I'm able to just identify something that I see in someone, I eventually will then walk you through where I came from, right? And I will get a little bit deeper into like what makes me me. Okay. And I will start to like unravel. But like first I got to get a little bit of a better understanding of where you're coming from. So I ask these canned questions. I have an interview guide that I go through. And to be honest, I don't really care about some of the questions. I'm just trying to understand what makes you tick and like to find out something about this person and where they come from. I'm looking for people that have a little bit of a chip, just because I know that in my experience and in our industry, the people that have something that's there that they're trying to prove tend to wind up doing extremely well in this industry. But once I get through the process, I will let them know, hey, this is where I came from. I'll never forget the person that made fun of me. I'll never forget the other guys that made fun of me for not hitting a baseball, and that I sat there at that birthday party, not being able to hit a single ball when I was fourth grade, and just sitting and hearing all of my friends laughing at me, thinking I lost all of my friends, and being like, oh my God, and just wanting to get to that damn pizza room so quickly because I thought that's it, my life was over. And when you have those things happen to you, those are moments in your life where you're just like, man, like they can either make or break you. And when I went into that car on a carpool and I went into my house, I ran to my mother crying, thinking that's it, my life was over. And then I was able to have a pity party for all of like 30 minutes. And then I ran into the backyard and I started practicing soccer every day. And I said, I will become great at that. I will work and work and work. And I wasn't better. I wasn't stronger. I was just faster and I wanted it more. I was more aggressive than everybody. And I just worked super hard. And just like that girl that made fun of me because I didn't have the pants because I had a knockoff pair, I could have sat there and been upset, but I just sat, you know what? As soon as I can get a job, I'm going to work. And I started mowing lawns and I did every little on-edge job so that when it was time to like buy clothes, I had my own money to try to contribute so that maybe I could have a little bit more. But I let people know these stories and I say that, look, the reality was I just never forgot any of this stuff. And I just always held it in and I just wanted to be better. And like, as I started to get better and better and better, I started to realize like, hey, as I was progressing in soccer, like back when I was a young kid, and I'll just share with you the story because this is what I'll tell to someone. And when people hear that you're being real and you're being authentic and that it doesn't come from a fake place, because they're used to interviews where people are just sitting there buttoned up and just giving you canned answers. When they hear it from this, they know it's authentic. They know it's real and that you're just someone that's out there just trying to help people, right? So they'll want to work with you, but it's like the reality is like, look, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget what made me practice soccer every day. And I thought that maybe I'm going to be a professional soccer player. When I blew my knee out, I'll never forget, like, oh crap, here I go. Like all of my hopes and dreams for maybe getting a scholarship. But my sister was like the 4.0 student and she was great at school. And so she would say to my parents, why are you being easier on Scott when all of a sudden, he's just because he's great at sports? She's like, well, I'm going to wind up making more money than him. So all of a sudden my sister went on my list. So it was like, check, she'll be on my list then. So when everything happened for me, I just would sit there and compartmentalize all of these people. Well, then I know that when all of a sudden I wound up getting into school anyway. In college, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I told you I got that internship. I wasn't sure what I was going to wind up doing. I remember getting out of school and thinking, am I ever going to make $100,000? Like, I don't know. I got that job. And when I started making 100 grand, I was like, oh my God, well, you know what? That's not that much money. I live in New York. After taxes, you take that back. It's like, well, that's not that much. Well, could I make 200? I remember in my head being like that 500K. So I started to get to 200. I was like, well, let's just keep going, keep working hard, put your head down, keep grinding, keep grinding. I get to 200. I know that deep down inside, when I was a kid, I was resentful of my parents and my dad because he couldn't get me this certain amounts of things. Because as a young kid, you're a snot-nosed little kid and you don't realize that your parents were just trying everything they could, but you just didn't know. You don't realize what your parents are going through, but I was just young. So as soon as I started making any amount of money, when I crossed over 200,000, I just wanted to say thank you to my dad because I never thought, to be honest, that I would make anything. So it was like, hey, when it was my dad's birthday, I went and I bought him a Movado. Then it was Father's Day. I went, I'm putting him into the Waldorf Astoria in the city with my mom and said, hey, go out for dinner and have the weekend. Then it was the Plaza. Then I put him up into Boston at the Ritz-Carlton, then into Philadelphia at the Ritz-Carlton there. But then I was like, man, always remembered that 500,000. And I said, I'm just going to keep grinding. Put your head down, block out the noise, and just keep grinding, keep going, keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. And I wound up getting to 500,000. I was like, let's freaking go. Come on, keep going, keep going. And I wound up hearing in my industry, in the lasers, that there was a guy out there that made $1 million. And I was like, is that possible, man? Can I do it? Can I get to that number? And I was like, just go, man. Block out the noise. Put your head down. Keep grinding. Keep hustling. And I just kept going. Lo and behold, bang, I crossed through 7 figures and I made that $1 million. Came time for my father's birthday and I bought him a Rolex.
Let's go.
So for me, it was like, you know what? My life is a period of people telling me what I can and cannot do. And my whole life is Goodwill Hunting. I will let every single rep that if I like them, I will let them know my story and I will let them know that my whole life has always been, I want now my father, when he was worried, I know when I got hurt that my mom and my father were worried what was going to happen with their son because their hopes and dreams were that I was going to get that scholarship and I was going to be successful. I now know that when my dad gets on the phone with his friends, he's able to say to his friends that his son made it. And it's not because I'm better or I'm smarter than anybody. It's because I'll outwork. And I grind and I hustle and I execute. And like I said, I was able to retire my wife at 28. My kids don't want or need for anything. And it's because I just work. And now I've reached everything that I've ever wanted. I've surpassed that million and I keep working. And the proudest things that I get to do now is to be able to give those types of opportunities to other people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care anymore. My LinkedIn used to say 12-time President's Club winner. I took that off because people in the industry, they know who I am. I don't have to boast for myself. So the reality is why people want to work for me is because I'm an executive that I may curse sometimes, right? But in a world that may be dirty, look, my wife is my North Star. I am loyal as loyal can be to my family. I will work as hard as I possibly can. But to the right and left of my bookshelves, the most important things to me besides my wife and my family are all the awards that I have won, is being able to be recognized amongst my peers. But the biggest satisfaction I get now is being able to let other people get to reach their goals and their aspirations. For them to be able to show their people, whether it's their parents, whether it's their significant others, whoever it is, or to be able to prove to the people that told them they weren't good enough, guess what? I did it. So when I'm getting on an interview with people, there is something that I just have, and it was God-given, that when I'm able to sit across from someone, I'm able to recognize and feel it and say, man, this guy or this gal, they got it. And I just want to be able to give people that opportunity to say, let's go out and let's friggin' get it. Let me give you that opportunity to be able to earn it.
And let's talk about that it factor. So are you looking for somebody that has that event in their life where now they have something to prove to other people? Is that it factor that you're looking for when you're hiring somebody?
Yeah, I think I just look for, once again, I have these canned questions that I ask, and it's less about the question, it's more about the story that they tell. But yeah, I am looking for something that people tell me that was, whether it's a watershed moment, something that they have that is driving them, a driving force. Now, it's not for everybody, but look, I definitely do look for, and it just happens. I'm able to feel it. I've been very, very fortunate that, look, there's been a lot of people I hired that are top reps in almost every company out there, that I'm able to find young, a lot of people are like, hey, I can recruit and I'll go grab the top rep at this company, that company, that company. I pride myself that I find I find new reps. I'm able to develop reps. So, hey, you may be able to steal reps. I'll develop my own. So go ahead. You may be able to hire mercenaries. I'm going to develop my own, man. So, but it is something where it's a combination, right? I tell recruiters, give me the people that other people said no to. Give me your tired, give me your weak, give me the people that have been told no, give me the guy with a chip on his shoulder. I don't care if they went to college. I don't care this. I don't care that. Give me the guy that's hungry. Give me the girl that's hungry. Give me something like I'm just looking for the story. Like, but I don't know. I wish I could tell you there's something that like you can put in a book that you'd be able to tell it, but there's a feel to it. There's a cadence to it. But I am looking for it definitely does help though when they've got something.
Now, on the opposite end, what are some red flags that you see in an interview where you decide, you know what, this person's not a good fit for us?
Sure. I think that when someone thinks like they're not professionally vulnerable and they think they have it all figured out and they're just like, hey, look, I know it all. I've been there. That to me is a bit of a flag because like, look, at the end of the day, I don't care how great that I feel that I am. I'm learning every day. And by great, I don't mean like I'm great. I'm just saying like, hey, I think that I'm pretty good at this space. But at the end of the day, I'll learn more from an entry level rep coming in because I still remember where I came from. And I'm still very concerned that one day I'll be back to that guy that couldn't afford the pair of pants. So I need to feel that no matter who the person is, that they are going to be vulnerable enough to be able to constantly learn. And when I hear from someone that's like, oh man, like, look, I wouldn't hire someone because unless they did like, then that to me is a flag. So I'm just looking for people that are definitely always open to new ideas and things like that. When someone comes to where they think they sort of know it all, but I am okay with someone being on the borderline, especially if they're young enough that are cocky, confident, because that was me. But they have to be willing to like learn a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Scott, I could go all day long talking to you about this. We're going to move on to the final part of our show, which is called the Final Four. These are the same four questions that we ask every single guest. Question number one is going to be, what is your favorite sales book or sales movie?
Sure. So I guess I can give you both. So one was more of a management book that like I was turned on to, and it was First Break All the Rules by Gallup. And I think that like for anybody that manages, I mean, it could be, you know, that when you get into management, or even if you were managing like a small pod, I think it was a great book for me. So that would be from the book standpoint. As far as like a sales movie, I think that like, you know, the answer that probably every young person would give is Wolf of Wall Street, which is great, but that's not going to be for me. I think that for me, the sales movies that I liked a lot were I loved Boiler Room. I think was a great one, but Glengarry Glen Ross was a good one. There's a bunch of them that were really good.
Awesome. Question number two, what sales strategy or tactic that you implemented completely changed sales for you and things just started to click?
Sure. You know, so I think because I constantly change and evolve, right? I think that when I realized, you know, because I always knew my analytics of like, hey, on my best years, I knew how many lasers that I sold a week. I think when I started to say, okay, do I need to keep track of like every little piece of the business and know, okay, well, are demos making sense? How many credit apps to get to a deal make sense? Like the really granulizing and starting to know things like that. But
Just
then
doing the math.
yeah. So really trying to calculate analytics. But then if I take it even a step further, to be honest, I always pitched and sold conversationally and just would sit next to somebody and just talk. It was when I decided to start using PowerPoint presentations and started having more of like a set cadence and being able to like utilize that. I think really in my louder years, right? I think that really helped refine me to even a far superior state. So I think that, to be honest.
Awesome. Cool. What is your favorite purchase that you've ever made with a large commission check?
My home theater.
Oh, very, very nice.
I think a lot of times people, because like I've bought watches, this, that, the other, but that's something that's like the gift that keeps giving always. Every time I sit in the theater with my family, whatever, I always reflect back and say, hey, this was from accomplishing that. And yeah, I think that's been great.
That's awesome. Knowing what you know now, after all the years of experience in sales, if you had to start all over again, what's the first thing that you would do to get back to where you are right now?
It's a good question. I think if I knew all of it, yeah, I think probably I would, because like the whole PowerPoint thing, it's a very different way of selling. And it's kept me, because I knew that there was a flow to the way to sell. And I don't know necessarily if I would do the PowerPoint per se, but it was a way of me making sure that I was going over specific aspects of the sale. Like, hey, what the product is, where we're going, and so on and so forth. Like, what's the market, what's the product? And I set up my presentation in such a way where it's really going over everything and it just leaves no holes, that I think that if I knew that way back then versus me more conversational, I was doing it that way anyway, but it was more talking.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would have incorporated that very early on. And I think I could have been more efficient. So yeah, I would say probably doing that earlier.
Cool. Awesome. And then last question, if people want to learn more about you, Scott, where can they find you?
Yeah, I would say that if they wanted I'm not a huge social guy, but like if they want to find me and if they're interested in getting into my space and being able to change their financial futures, you could always look to hit me up and get a job at Cynosure Lutronic and reach me directly on LinkedIn. My name is Scott Karten. You can come and reach me there, or you can come and through our company and find me there as well.
Awesome. Scott, this has been an amazing episode, very insightful. Thank you so much for your time and being on the show. And I'll see you soon, my friend.
My pleasure, man. Later.